Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Erasmus Expeditions. We are here with our show, the Help Action series, which is kind of one part interview, one part topic discussion, one part Q&A. And this is going to be episode number 39 of the series. And tonight we're going to be talking about gaming with an audience. So, it's awesome to be back. So happy to have everyone here. And I'm excited to welcome my very good friend and guest, Tamiko. So, Tamiko, you son of a bitch, how are you?
Ahoy. I am doing okay. Uh, what is it? I'm a little old lady, so my back
Mm.
hurts. And work's been crazy, but besides that, I'm just doing the best I can in these terrible times.
How's the glaucoma?
It acts up from time to time. It
Are
makes
you?
night driving a real bitch. So,
I'm verklempt. As you can see, we have our pearls so that they can be clutched at any moment. Um,
oh, you should probably do the swear disclaimer now.
Oh, yeah, I guess so, huh? Yeah, if you're new to my channel somehow, and foul language or mature subject matter or really immature humor or things that bother you, uh, you probably want to go somewhere else on the internet. Just a suggestion. If not, then, well, buckle up, Buttercup. Yeah, so why don't you tell people where they can find you, what you got going on, all that kind of stuff, and then we'll get this thing rolling.
Okay. I have no channel of my own, so I just shwill other people's channels. So catch me. You can catch me some Fridays because we're going down to once a month now, which is kind of a bummer. But some Fridays at CFT RPG, where we're playing our One Ring campaign. You can catch me over in the chats at Jarl DM and Mini Terrain Domain. Speaking of Mini Terrain Domain, I have
Look at
to
the
show
jiggly
off
on that shirt.
the splorch on my goodies. So,
Splorch on your goodies. It's different than ham on your goodies.
well, we're
It's
both wearing pearl necklaces, Jeremy. So I think we're far beyond
hey,
that.
I'm just a huge fan of ZZ Top. I mean,
Uh, so yeah, and you can catch me over in Mini Terrain Domains Discord also. So I spend a lot of time there. We've been hanging out a lot there with the new release, the update of Valheim. We've spent a lot of time like chatting at each other and stuff. So because we're
yeah,
trying to build a community. By building a community, I mean literally we're trying to build shit in the game because our old server got wiped, so we kind of had to start from
oh, that
mostly scratch.
sucks.
It does, but it actually turned out to be quite a blessing because I mean, new map. So we get a new map. So there's the joy of exploration is
There you
back.
go.
Yeah,
Nice. Yeah, and I guess you get to kind of make it your own from the
it's so
ground
true.
up, knowing what you're doing now, as opposed to having to kind of learn as you were going and add on. My wife and I have been saying the kind of the same thing with having to do so much of the renovation after Hurricane Harvey for our house. It's all of these things that kind of needed to get done and never got done. All of a sudden became a chance to kind of do it the way that we wanted it done from the beginning, and kind of update everything to make it fit our needs
With,
better. So
a little bit of incentive to actually get it done since everything
yes,
was, toast.
yeah, exactly.
I
I would
feel
say
so
light a
bad for
fire
you.
under our asses, but there was no fire; it was just water. But yeah. Uh, well, you've long been a champion and a cheerleader of people's channels and the projects that they're working on, and you're almost in, I think, every audience chat that I've ever either run or been a player in. um, I see your name pop up all the time, and it's always a joy to get the chance to interact with you in the chat. And so I know that that you probably have a lot of thoughts and feelings about what it's like to game with an audience. So I'm really happy to have you on to discuss this particular topic with you. Not only that, but I also just enjoyed talking to you. So,
Oh, I enjoyed talking to you too.
oh,
I
thank you.
get together with Jeremy and get some of that coffee talk
So
going
coffee talk.
on.
Don't get me started. Oh,
Oh, we've
Barbara,
got to chat. We've got
she's
to
like
get
butter.
that. We've got to get that Golden Girls Honey Heist game together. Is what we need to do.
Yes, someone please run Honey Heist with us playing Golden Girls themed bears. That would be amazing. I can't wait. Okay, let's dive in. One of the very first things that I like to try to get out there is where did you find gaming? How did you get into this hobby?
I mean, I always considered myself a gamer since I was a wee child because I started out with video gaming. So big on the consoles, basically up through what is it, through Xbox 360. We were big on the consoles, super big. And I didn't actually start. I'm actually a late bloomer for the tabletop RPGs. So I know most of the older uh gamers started out like way back when, when all the D&D and D and everything first started. But for me, I played my first tabletop role-playing game was, shocker, Dungeons and Dragons, but it was second edition with ye olde Thaco, and and it was actually my first ex-fiance who got me into that. So he just sat down one day and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna play Dungeons and Dragons." And I'm like, "We are?" It's like, "Yes, we are. People are coming over. We're playing. This is a thing. Here's your character." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So that's basically how I got started. Shockingly, me and this guy broke up because, I do very well with relationships. Um, but I think after about a month of being broke up, his friends contacted me. They're like, "Yeah, we still want a game with you." we, we ditched the other guy. You come play with us. Like, oh, okay, that's fine. But
That's
we
incredible.
played. I know, right? So we played second edition up until 3.5 came out, and then we played 3.5, and we also dabbled in a couple of other games. So we dabbled in. There is a game. I don't know if a lot of people know about it. It's called Champions. It's, superhero themed.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah, so we played a little bit of that, and we played, a little bit of oh god, what was that? Palladium?
Ooh, wow. Yeah, that's a deep cut.
I didn't like that one so well.
I've heard a lot of really bad things about the Palladium system.
So yeah, but I played with them for about 2 years. So, I guess I started when I was like 21 and stopped when I was 23. And then fast forward, didn't play at all until I was in a guild in Final Fantasy 14. We were a real tight knit guild. We were playing together for about 5 years, from about 2010 through 2015, when one of the guys says, "Hey, anybody here interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons?" And I was like, "Holy shit, I haven't heard that name in forever." I'm like, yeah, I'm interested. I've got books and everything." And he's like, "Great, you've got 5th edition?" I'm like, "Sorry, what?" There How many editions are there now? Crap. So so I had to go out and get the 5th edition book, flip through it. I'm like, "Well, this pretty much looks mostly the same." It wasn't. It's not the same. So, so we started playing on Roll 20, and eventually that guy got burnt out, And so one of the other people who was playing hopped in and was like, I'm going to run this bitch now. And so we played with him until he got burnt out. And then I had no group and I was sad. So I went to Roll20 and started drunk applying for games through that platform. Um, that's an interesting thing to do. Just look at games, toss out some drunk applications, because why wouldn't you? And somebody was actually interested. It's my old DM Brian, who I talk about a lot, and he picked me up for a game. My friend Jason Lunchbox, who I talk about a lot, was also in that game. The rest is history. I was a what is it? I was a regular fixture in most of Brian's games for a good solid 2-3 years. Um, but he moved to a different country, and it made time zones and everything made gaming with that group not very tenable. So I was sad to lose that gaming group, but I was happy to have gained a network of new friends through Absolute Tabletop. So, yay. So I picked up, what is it? I jumped into the Absolute Tabletop community circa 2017 and hit the ground running and haven't looked back.
That's awesome. Um, yeah, AbTab is been a really fantastic place. It's allowed me to meet a lot of just spectacular people, people who are not only very creative, but also genuine and kind and supportive and creative in a lot of different ways. So it's been very good for me to be able to find a community um, that's that cohesive and that positive, because there's not a lot of places like that on the internet. Um,
There's really
so
not. It's most, this might come as a shock, but most of the internet is a cesspool.
that is so true. I used to do a lot of online gaming as well. I used to play a lot of Halo, probably several hours every day, multiplayer. And the online gaming community used to be a pretty cool place. You know, for the most part, you wouldn't really interact much with anybody, but every once in a while, you would come across somebody who was willing to talk on their mic, and they would be friendly. You'd have a cool little exchange. You could add them to your friends list. It was pretty cool. But after just a couple of years, it tanked, and it tanked really hard, and it became, like you said, a cesspool. Just people, shouting racial slurs or playing music straight into their microphone at the full volume, or just being rude and um, awful people. So then I just stopped playing with a microphone for a long time, and then I just stopped playing altogether. But yeah, I definitely kind of made a bit of a transition into playing a lot more role playing games online. Doing live streams and things. So, speaking of which,
Oh my God, that was an enormous thing that you just pulled out there. Like, I've got this
wow,
Bible of questions.
I work out, so no, it's just my folder.
Oh, okay.
It's just, yeah. These are all the questions we're going to go through. I added a Dewey Decimal System, so I can easily
Strap
index the
in.
questions.
We're going to be
No,
here a while.
no, it's just one page.
Okay.
Okay, so live plays, virtual plays, live streams, whatever you want to call them, they have a little bit of a different vibe than private games do. The main difference being, obviously, the presence of an audience. Even if that audience isn't attending the session live, there is a chance that they might be watching it at some point in the future. This presence tends to require some level of acknowledgement by the GM and the players. Some people that I have played with take the approach of completely ignoring the audience and just doing their thing. Others, myself included, take a more of an approach of putting on a show, kind of for that theoretical audience. Where would you fall on this kind of spectrum of approach?
Well, I know this is going to be a shocking answer for you, but, I am I am a quipper. I like to crack wise a lot. So, I think I tend to play that up a lot when I'm playing for an audience. Don't get me wrong, I still crack a lot of wise and whatnot when we're doing like non-streamed games. But and when I'm just sitting around like hanging out and talking with people too. But yeah, I don't know. I think that what is it? I think that bringing in some well some well-timed like one-liners or quips really just what is it? Really just engages the people who are watching. Like they what is it? In my experience, they tend to really respond well to all of that. And I always try to inject humor into most things that I do, which is why you're not going to often see me on some of the more serious games, like the grim type Lloyd style games, because I what is it? I actually have a really hard time not like reining in my chuckle fuckery sometimes. So and I know that that can be very distracting for a lot of players, DMs, if the overall tone of a game is not that. Now, it's always good to inject some levity. Is that it? Is it levity or brevity?
Levity.
Thank you.
I mean,
It's
levity could
always
have brevity, I guess.
it's always good to inject some levity into those games anyways, but because I know myself and my personality, I basically just try to do the world a favor and avoid most of the serious games. Um, I know I didn't really answer your question very well,
No, you did it
but
all. You did
uh,
absolutely.
expect more of this. This is how I interview for jobs also. They'll ask
Pitching
me a
the pets.
question and I will ramble on about something completely different for a while everybody kind of looks at each other and goes, Is she answering the question? Is this something she's speaking so well. I really can't tell if this is correct or not." So, yeah.
No, I think it answered the question perfectly fine. Um,
Thanks.
yeah, I tend to fall back on humor a lot as well. I know people who are watching this are probably also shocked, but that's usually my go-to at a table as far as like the role that I fulfill in a group of characters is usually the comic relief in some form or fashion. It's also just my nature. I like making people laugh. And I find a lot of humor in the situations that characters end up in Dungeons and Dragons, in games like that. So that's usually my go-to. I tend to run more serious games just because I like exploring darker themes whenever I'm running a game. Um, but I have no problem with levity even in serious games. It's I'm the kind of person that can interject levity and then immediately go right back into like the serious tone, and it doesn't mess with my immersion at all. It might with other people's, and for that I apologize, I guess. But yeah, I I definitely like to, like I said, kind of put on a show, especially with the games that I'm running. I have a background in theater arts. In high school, my focus was mainly on acting, but whenever I transitioned into college a major in theater, um, I found that I had a love for the entire process of putting a production together, lighting, sound, costume, props, set design, and building, the whole shebang. But I really enjoyed seeing all of these different art forms come together to form a well-rounded production, so that everything fed into a culmination of experience for the audience. Everything was done with their perception in mind, which was a really cool thing to see and learn. And with RPGs, there's already an audience. You know, the players around the table, and the DM included, are the audience typically for a private game. But if you're playing online, then that audience is just expanded a bit. You know, there's just other
Exactly.
people.
I
Yeah,
mean, I really enjoy that you brought up the theater because I mean, really, that's what gaming online reminds me of. It's like you're out there with your troop of people, and you're what is it? You're playing your role. You're there to put on a show. You're entertaining, and what is it? And I feel like especially if you've got the live chat going at the same time, it's what is it? The interaction makes it what is it? It makes it gives you more material to riff off of. Um, I've more than once asked the chat, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I have no idea what to do here. I'm out of ideas, or bounce ideas off them, like, hey, so I'm thinking I might either do this or this. What do y'all think? Kind of thing. And just get their feedback. Because I mean, as both a player and an actor, I do best when I am bouncing things off of other people. Like my improv is better when I have a partner, or somebody else to feed me ideas.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm the exact same way. Um, I have a few videos on the channel that are just me, like talking over, doing voice over for a crafting video or something, and I go back and I rewatch the things occasionally, and I come across incredibly dry, um, because I am so used to incorporating what other people are saying and making a joke off of it, or giving that volley, that back and forth. And without it, I'm a very boring person apparently. Um, but and I think what you said about streaming online being very close to acting, I mean, obviously, you're playing a role in all of this, but I think with the addition of there being a chat, um, that gives a little bit of that response, that recall, that you get as a thespian, when you're performing on on a stage. Um, you can feel the energy coming off of the audience that's watching your performance, and you can tell when what you're doing is landing, and what you're doing, and when what you're doing is not landing, and you can adjust on the fly, and hopefully, you know pull out a really energized performance. The same with your co-stars, the people that you're sharing the stage with. And I think RPGs rely on some of that. If you have that kind of that empathy, if you're able to pick up on that with your fellow players and your DM, then you can kind of keep that energy going. And then having the chat active, especially, then it gives you the same kind of recall that you're looking for whenever you're an actress, to know whether or not something's working, or something is not playing right, or they're not getting something and you need to maybe explain it a little bit further. So I think that it's a really crucial is not the right word. Um, it's a very helpful addition, in my opinion.
I agree.
Um, I do want to say, however, that though you should perhaps, in my opinion at least, address the audience in some fashion, whether you're actually saying hello to them or not in the beginning, or whether you're constantly talking about, hey, so and so showed up, welcome to the game. Um, I think most importantly, that the experience of the players and the GM needs to always come first. They're your first audience. They're the balcony seats. You play to them first. The rest are the groundlings. They're the people that get to jeer and throw things at you if you're doing badly. Thankfully, we have the help of being distanced through the internet, so that I don't have to get eggs in the face.
I mean, if you're ever watching something that I'm doing and you disagree with what I'm doing, feel free to throw things at me, but you should probably throw money, because
There you go.
that's the best way to get my attention.
That's true. That'll get me to shut up real fast. If you don't like my jokes, pay me.
I mean, to be fair, To be fair, I have been not a player, I have been an audience member in a few streams where people have literally done that. Like, thrown money at the thing. These were charity streams. Like, please stop. Please just stop.
That's funny. Oh man. Okay, there's actually a question that I came with that was preloaded that actually touches on this a little bit. It's from Tim Carney. He asks, what's more important, the gamer's experience or the audience's? When you stream, do you imply that your audience is a participant in some measure? And if not, then why stream?
Oh, obviously, the gamers experience, like your troop, the people at your table, virtual or otherwise, are the people who come first. You always, You always give them the attention that they need. And speaking from experience, I've done it. I've gotten whew, sidetracked on either the live stream chat or the infamous in-game side chats that we all know so well. Um,
I don't know what you're talking about.
uh-huh. Uh, Sometimes I will get wrapped up in what's going there and then have that moment, that moment where you're like ice down your neck, like, holy shit, I have no idea what's happening in the game right now. Maybe like
Teacher just called on me. Oh no.
and then it's like there's the sheer panic followed by, okay, I guess I'm just gonna fake it till I make it, maybe no one will notice. And it really is the worst feeling. So, like, I mean, my advice in general is just if you're having trouble splitting your attention, pay attention to the game. Pay attention to the game until there's a moment where you think that you don't need to give all of your attention, like there's a debate going on or something about whether something's allowable in a combat or something. Then go over to the side chat. But I mean, audience or no, like, the people that you're gaming with, if you lose them, you don't have a fucking game anymore. So what would it matter if you have an audience or not? Like,
It's very succinctly put. Yeah. Yeah, and I would have to agree. I think that your attention needs to be on the game primarily. And if you have trouble paying attention to both, then the choice should be obvious to you. And yeah, and I'm certainly guilty of the same thing. The deer in the headlights, called on the carpet kind of situation. It's definitely happened to me. I tend to pay far less attention to the chat whenever I'm running a game because I have a lot more plates spinning. But as a player, I tend to try to be as engaged in the chat as I can. Now, in certain games, it's easier than others. In Dawnbringers, I've touched on this a few times before, but in Dawnbringers, my character Talmud he is the comic relief, and he doesn't usually get involved in the more serious discussions that happen. There are plenty of other players in that game that can handle that and do so very well, and can talk ad nauseum is not the right term, but they can vamp for a long time on a topic and be perfectly fine without me needing to interject anything. And I trust them. Whatever decision they make, I'm probably going to be fine with. No big deal. So I can save Talmud's reactions to alleviate the moment whenever it's gone dark and heavy and kind of serious for a bit. I let it breathe, and then Talmud comes in and says something stupid and ridiculous and makes an ass out of himself. And playing that kind of a role frees up my attention, so that I can pay more attention to the chat and engage more, especially with something like the Dawnbringers, where the chat is so active and there's so many people that come back week after week, and they're giving money to the channel. So I feel the need to try to engage them, to try to give something back, something that I can give back, to make it feel worthwhile. And there's just a lot of really great people that watch that show. So I like to try to engage as much as I can. But if it ever comes to a point where I find myself in that moment where, oh shit, Jake just said something and I heard my character's name and I don't know what's going on, then I feel that icy pit in my stomach. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I need to just not not continue with the chat for just now.
Oh yeah, and I feel the need to clarify because Cole's like, hang on. Audience members though are really important, really important part of the experience, and that is
Certainly.
100% true. Um, I think anybody who's ever actually watched me play in a Friday game, you can tell when I'm not able to split my focus between like interacting with the chat and um and playing the game, because I'll go radio silent in the chat for a while I'm dealing with, while I'm working out what I'm supposed to be doing in game, because that's what you should be doing. But I do try to I try to involve the chat as much as I can, to the point where I'm the guy who will spill all the beans about what's happening in our side chat over in the live chat, because I I hate I get that FOMO when you see everybody like laughing in the stream and you have no idea what's happening because it's not jiving with what's actually going on in the game. And that feeling of like, there's a joke. Someone made a joke. What happened? So yeah, I try to carry a lot of that over to the audience, because because it's just a little bit of giving back.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a really good point. It's something I hadn't really ever thought of. Yeah, a lot of the humor that goes on in the side chats in the games that I'm in is a little a little raunchier than is probably okay just for the general audience, especially Dawnbringers. But yeah, it's good to have a people's champion, if you will, kind of letting them in on a lot of that behind the scenes humor, because some of it really is some of the best humor, because it's in the moment. It's born from what's going on in the game typically, and there's a lot of there's just a lot of really good rapport and in jokes in the games where that happens a lot. I found typically the groups that joke the most in their private chat are the games that tend to run the best, usually. I know, Cole. It's shocking. Clutch the pearls.
I've known Jeremy for almost 5 years, and there's no way he's pure as the driven snow.
I'm as pure as these pearls are white. Just as well rounded. All right, so we have a question from Cole, as a matter of fact, who asks, how is gaming online with an audience different than without? I know that we mentioned that there are differences, but what are some of those differences?
Well, I extend the courtesy of wearing pants when we do the stream. So, I'm not
But
just
not in
Donald.
person.
Yeah, well, I mean,
That's the
we're not
difference.
talking about in person. We're talking about streamed versus not streamed. So,
Oh,
like,
that's fair.
yeah, like if you're not streamed, you can have the camera off. You can Donald Duck it all day. You can freaking what is it? I'm wireless. So for me, a big huge difference from when I play in a non-streamed game versus a streamed game is my ass isn't tethered to the chair the entire time. So most of the time when I'm playing, I'm up, I'm cooking, I'm smoking, I'm cleaning stuff up, like chasing down my cat. Like, it's, what is it? It's a totally different thing. But I mean, that's the whole point of non-stream games, though, is you're just getting together with your pod of people and sharing an experience just with each other. And so it's much more casual um, in general. Uh, it's more casual. You don't have to worry about saying the wrong things. Oh, that's a big one for streamed games, right? Like you never know if you're accidentally going to say something that'll be misconstrued as something very bad. Next thing you know, you're viral on Twitter. Did you see what this streamer girl said in her game? Like, oh shit and Shinola. Like what did I do? But yeah, I mean, I'm actually in a non-streamed game right now with a great group of people. We only get together like a couple times a month, but it's great. It's super casual, but I will say that one of the things whenever anything spectacular happens in that game, it's like, I wanna tell people about it. I'm like, "Oh my god." It was like, we didn't know where we were, and a talking squirrel came along, and there was some crazy shit, and crap, I guess you just had to be there because there's no VOD that I can direct you to, like, there's no going back.
Yeah. I hadn't really. I had read the question differently because for me, all of my online games are streamed. Well, I guess I take that
Oh.
back. There's a game that I play in of Connor Davies's that is not streamed. But aside from that one, all of them are streamed. And the only non-streamed games that I play are the in-person games that I
The
play.
only in-person games I've played since I was 22 have been at Con. So I don't do
Oh
a home
wow!
group here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I've
Yeah.
we've just had the group that I play with at home together for so long that it is kind of the established norm. We've played together for 21 years now, on a weekly basis, you know, outside of holidays and things like that. But and then there was a stint, obviously, where COVID screwed everything up. But we're back together now. So
I
um,
saw. You're back together with set pieces, no less.
yes, with minis and terrain, and that was going to be one of the answers that I was going to give. Is that's one of the biggest differences for gaming with an audience, um, other than without, is like my home group. We don't have to worry about pacing as much. You know, with an online game, when I'm running it, at least, I'm very mindful of the pace that it's moving at. Um, Trying to make sure that we're getting through the things that I know are tedious to watch if you're not taking part in them, that we're trying to get through those as fast and efficiently as possible and getting back to the story development and the character development, the stuff that is, as an audience member, a lot more rewarding to watch. Um, so like with our home group, if we want to have a 6 hour session where it's a single combat, we can. And that's okay. You know, there's not going to be people that are getting super bored and clocking out and, tuning out, turning the stream off, what have you, because most everybody who's at the table is engaged in what's going on round to round. Um, so that's one of the biggest differences for me. The other, I would have to agree as far as the kind of curbing what you're saying. I know most people who watch my games probably don't think that I curb much, but I do. I promise I do. There is still a lot that does not come out because, um, yeah, because my humor is hard to take sometimes, and I know that it is. There's a lot of things that I say that go over like a lead balloon, and I have to kind of check that at the door a little bit, but it's all good.
Now I feel that. Um, what is it? I constantly I'm that guy who after I say things, I'll rewind it and replay it in my head over and over and over again like holy shit, that wasn't the right thing to say. Like I should have said this or oh man, this would have been a way better zinger. But like, you know, moments passed, so but I mean, who among us is not all up in their own heads? Like, for real. And whoever you are, you're a liar,
We're calling you out now.
right?
Yeah. No, yeah. It's definitely something that I try to be mindful of, and try to let out just the stuff that I think is going to be mostly acceptable. Maybe a little shocking. I think that some of that is okay. It's good for people to get their heart going a little, get their pearls nice and shiny because they're getting handled. Um, but yeah, especially in this day and age, you have to be careful about what you say out in public. Um, you should be. There's not enough people that are, unfortunately. Um, okay, let's get another preloaded question. Actually, no, we're gonna do one of my questions. Um, Immersion can be a difficult thing for a lot of people to achieve, and particularly to maintain, especially amid distractions. Kind of what we touched on a little bit. Oftentimes, if there are enough viewers present in a game's chat, an entirely different conversation is going on. If you're one of the people playing or running the game in question, how do you go about splitting your attention? How do you engage with the live audience while trying to maintain focus on the game itself?
Well, we did kind of already touch on this, and I would say when you're an actual player, I can't speak for running the game because I have not done that yet. But speaking as a player, um, like I said earlier, the window to look for is when things are happening in the game that don't necessarily involve you, your character, or your attention for things that'll come up later. So those are the best times to catch up on the chat, interact with the chat, and get your voice out there. As for larger streams, I wouldn't know. I've never really been part of a larger stream. We typically average about like a dozen people or so
That's pretty
every
good.
time. Yeah, like around there every stream. So I've don't know how that goes with the bigger ones. I assume I wouldn't be able to keep up with the chat, but at that point, when you have an audience that's larger, I feel like you don't really have to because as a semi-professional audience member for some of my friends' streams and games, um, you just basically need to anchor a couple of Tamikos in your chat and they will keep everybody else in the chat engaged and keep everything going. So, what is it? So the people who are actually in the middle of the game don't have to worry about trying to make the engagements and whatnot themselves. I know I have a tendency to I hop into everybody's chats, even if it's just for a little while. just to say hi, uh, bandy some jokes around and some, well wishing and stuff. But yeah, um, sorry. I am not the only professional audience member. I have to give props to the rest of the three witch bitches. Um, uh,
That was going to be my next question.
yep. Myself, Cole, and Kenya. If the trifecta of us are in your chat, you don't need to worry about your chat. We will keep it going for you.
Yeah, I would have to agree. The three of you are phenomenal custodians of gaming chats. You guys are great at keeping it going and making it light and funny and engaging and a welcoming place with a lot of warmth. So that's definitely something that
I
I've
love them
loved to
so
see.
much.
All three of you are awesome, without a doubt. Um, yeah, okay. We actually have a question from Cole. Uh, what do you feel you owe the audience, such as pacing? What else?
Well, what is it? So speaking again, just as a player, I don't have a channel so that I curate myself, but I feel like if somebody is there and they're giving me the gift of time, I feel like I need to entertain them. Like like you have to give them something, and the to me that's one of the worst feelings also. um okay, get ready to clutch your pearls. Now you might remember we what is it, in our Friday game we were playing Adventures in Middle Earth, and it took us a little while to get used to that system, but we picked it up rather quickly. And then 3 sessions ago, I think 3 or 4, we switched over to One Ring Alpha. And I'm not gonna lie, that was culture shock going. You wouldn't think it would be, but the 2 systems are so drastically different from each other that it was a bit of a learning curve and a slog. We're still learning. And I felt so bad for everybody who were in our chats during like those first 2 games, because a lot of it was basically just us like doing this furrow brow thing, scratching our heads like, "Well, I don't understand how that works. How does that even work like that?" And I mean, that's not entertaining TV. Like TV, I call it TV. Like, everybody's tuning in to Twitch to watch their stories. But yeah, I mean, I know that when I go to as an audience member, when I go to watch a live stream, it's the same way. Like if they're getting too bogged down by like rules arguments or things like that, it's kind of like a, okay, get on with it. I mean, if you're not watching it live, you can watch it at like 1.5 speed. That helps, or double speed. But when you're live, there's not a whole lot you can do. And I find that if things get too bogged down, or if the combat in some situations isn't cinematic enough and is too rulesy, I will start to tune out as an audience member, and then the next thing you know, something's happened and I have no idea what just happened. This is one of the reasons why I'm going to mention the the game that shall not be named. This is one of the reasons why I went from being a rabid Critical Role fan to being a eh fan. I feel like when they hit season 2, it there was more focus on combats, and they weren't as cinematic, and everything would just drag out, and I would just lose track of where I was, and then just not finish an episode. So,
I can't speak to the Critical Role thing because I I started the journey with the first season, and I made it, I think, 10 or so episodes in. Um, and I just kind of lost interest. It's not that it wasn't good, it's just there was a lot of people talking over one another, um, a lot of moments of, like, I could tell there was tension at the table. I can't remember the guy's name, but he played with him in the beginning, and then there was a big, explosion, and ended up taking an exit and all that
Oh,
kind of stuff.
it got so much better after he left because
Yeah, I believe it.
there was so much tension when he was there. But
Yeah,
I don't
you
want
could
this
you
to
could hear it.
devolve into a
Oh no, yeah, yeah.
we're gonna devolve into a coffee talk with just me and Jeremy. We'll do that separately, where Jeremy and I will just sit down and
More
and
so.
drink all the tea, spill all the tea about these popular online actual plays. Yeah, that'll be a good series, I'm sure. But
Very entertaining.
I do want to go back really quick. Oh crap, my train of thought. Um,
Getting old
so I
sucks.
had something. I had a thing to go back to a thing, and now I can't remember what it was.
Before Critical Role,
Yeah.
what do you owe the audience? Pacing, pearl
Uh,
necklaces.
I'll figure it out.
It's easy
Yeah,
talk.
I think it had something to do with pearl necklaces, but
I mean,
I'll
when does it not? Honestly.
I'll figure it out,
Okay,
or I won't.
that's fair. As far as like what I feel like I owe the audience, I would have to largely agree with what you said, Tamiko. Is entertainment. Like, if I'm running a game virtually, even for the group of people that I managed to get together, then I know that we're probably going to have a good time. I'm careful enough about who I pick for my campaigns, especially, um, that I know that it's going to be a fun time just hanging out and playing together. But streaming, I want to also make sure that it's as entertaining as I can for someone who's not able to play to still be able to watch and consume as a form of media. So I try very hard to keep things cinematic as much as I can. And when there are rules questions, which I don't mind answering rules questions on the fly at all. I prefer if a player is comfortable enough to ask when they don't know something, so that we can cover it and hopefully educate them on that particular topic, and then get back to playing, as opposed to it looming over them as this thing about their character that they're never going to fully understand. That bothers me as a game master. I don't want that at my table. So fielding questions as they come up is, to me, almost as important as putting the game out there itself, because that shows that it is a part of the hobby, and that it's I think a healthy behavior to adapt at your table. So I'm trying to lead by example, as much as I can, with the trial and errors that I have gone through and learned, as a dungeon master, because I think that there is value in learning those kinds of skills from people, that you're watching play. Because I know that I have picked up a lot of really useful tools and tricks from watching other DMs run games. So I'm hoping that by being transparent with a lot of that kind of stuff, that I can maybe help someone who might need that nudge, to tell someone that it's okay to stop and answer a question and then go back to playing. But I try to do so as succinctly as possible, to give them the information they need, make sure that they understand, and then we're going to go back to the game. The thing that I don't do, in streamed games, is I will not entertain an argument about rules or about a ruling. That's not going to happen, because that is incredibly boring. That's incredibly boring for me to take part in, even if I'm one of the people that's arguing. And I sure as hell don't want that sitting on my channel. So if there's a discussion that needs to happen, save that shit for after the game, and we'll talk about it all you want, and then hopefully arrive at some kind of common ground. But don't drag that shit out in front of everybody. That's not cool.
Yeah, I think that we did a overall, like, I mean, like I said, it was embarrassing because there was a lot of rules discussion. How does this work? How does this mechanic work? But to be fair, it is a brand new system. It's in an alpha, so at the same time, like you were saying, there is value in having these discussions because it could benefit somebody else further down the road who's like clicking through videos like, oh, let's look at some One Ring Alpha, why
Yeah,
not?
for sure.
And I
What do
remembered
you,
the thing
oh yeah, please.
and I wrote it down because Cole was like, write it down.
She's there
Because
for you.
because she's a genius. And what is it? Cole's basically like my my handler. She makes sure that I get things done and don't fuck shit up. Um So, one of the things I thought of when we were talking about a streamed game versus a not streamed games, like what are the differences there? One of the other big differences is with a streamed game, you need to police your mic. You need to police your mic because it is a courtesy to mute yourself and not have a hot mic when you're streaming a game. And this is my opinion. I know it's a what is it? Some people might find it to be an unpopular opinion, but it cuts down on all of that. What is it? Like we were talking about with Critical Role, the side chatter, the talking over each other, etc. I what is it? I think that it's personally distracting when I'm watching a game and somebody's like having a character's having their moment, you know, and then suddenly somebody's like "Pa, ha, ha, ha," and laughing or interjecting. Like I find that to be distracting, but that that's a streamed game rule. It's not a home game rule. So it's like if you're doing a non-streamed game, you could all decide to like leave your mics open so that you can just banter at each other like while everything else is going on. And what is it? I'm really cognizant about policing my mic anyways because oftentimes I have a lot of things going on in my background. So yeah, a couple times when I actually did leave my mic hot, I was devastated. I was like, how long has that been on? Why didn't anybody say anything? Like, oh, but yeah, mic courtesy, y'all. Keep muted.
Yeah. I can't emphasize that point enough. I think it's a huge thing of etiquette and just politeness of making sure that's something that you are aware of as a player, as an individual, so that the other people at the table don't have to be aware of it for you. Um, yeah, and that's one of the things that the side chat is good for, is so that any of that kind of side chatter that would normally be distracting and at a table in person. Oh, I was like, oh shit. But no, damn it, Tamiko,
Sorry.
you derailed the train. No.
My
At a
bad.
table, you can lean over and whisper quietly to the person sitting next to you. And it's not going to typically take away from or distract from the conversation or the issue that the GM is currently handling in that moment. Now, it might distract you from being a part of that, but it's not going to take away from everybody else's experience who wants to focus on, the main thing that's happening at the table. But in a virtual game, you can't really do that. Not well. Especially like in the old days where like the camera like cut to whoever was speaking. That was awful because like you'd have somebody eating chips and like somebody's delivering a
The
monologue with
hang
like
games, the ones we did in Google Hangouts where
uh-huh,
like the window would just suddenly shift.
yep,
Oh my god.
because
Yep.
somebody shifted in their chair or or burped. That's
Yeah,
always
speaking
great.
of which, I'm surprised I haven't yet. That's
Yeah.
one of the myriad reasons why I'm trying to police my mic now because I realized I wasn't in the beginning. So I was like, oh, it's just me and Jeremy here, so it doesn't matter.
It's true. I see how I
So
rank. Thanks. No, I'm glad that I get to hear your belches, Tamiko. I say like it's a common thing. Um, so let's go with Jason's question. He says, "Have you ever let audience chat influence the game in any way, story wise, etc.?"
Oh God, yes. Gods, yes. I think what is it? Back when we were playing Curse of Strahd, what is it? I came up with a couple of my bonehead ideas on my own, but some of them came straight from chat. like uh, I'd be like I said earlier, I'd be like, crap, I don't know what to do, especially in the early days before I got my magic weapons and stuff, and before I had the assassinate ability. um it was real hard because it's really hard to play Curse of Strahd when you're just like a normal ass rogue with no real special abilities and no magic weapons, and the GM's like, here's a bunch of vampires. Like, what the hell do you do then? So what is it? I basically played several games where I was just help action Rylan, because that's all I could think to do. But I know a couple times chat came up with some ideas that at least got my mind spinning. Um, like, oh, well, what is it? Why don't you burn them? Don't you have fire arrows? No, no, I don't. But I think that there's a lantern nearby, so I'm just gonna go grab that and chuck it on a motherfucker, you know? So yes, absolutely. What is it? Chat has saved my bacon several times. And then what is it? And then of course, uh, the other side of that coin is what is it? Is not necessarily direct ideas coming from the chat, but anybody who's ever watched a mini terrain domain game knows that chat can influence the game by donating dice. Um, and the dice actually give the players myriad different perks. So absolutely, the chat can influence games. Um, I don't know if I honestly don't know if the chat's ever influenced a game story wise. We'd have to we'd have to pull in Alan or Lionel to find out about that, but I'm sure it's wholly possible that at some point they've looked down, seen somebody say something, been like, interesting thought. So yeah.
Yeah, I can say with absolute certainty that it has in my games. It's not something um, that I've had the chance to use a lot, but there are occasionally when somebody will put their speculations about a situation, and it's the same kind of thing as a GM when your table is forming hypotheses about how things are going to go and what this might mean. If your players are doing that as a GM, you need to be paying attention because that's a place to mine for gold for you. Because if they're already kind of leaning in that direction, if it makes sense with kind of where you're, you know, building things, then take their answer, take their suspicions, at least into consideration, and play with it. Reward them if it's clever enough. I think that's if you don't do that, I think that's a failed opportunity. And the same thing can be said for your chat. Um, because they're going to be hypothesizing about where things might be going and making speculations as well. And why not also take that into consideration? Now, it might be wildly off base and it doesn't work with what you've got or what you're planning, and then there's no harm in just saying that's an interesting theory and just kind of tossing it aside. But at least taking it into consideration is wise, I think.
Absolutely. And Cole just pointed out that we actually bid for the chat what is it? We got the chat involved in naming her pony when we were doing adventures in Middle Earth. And I do also, it just like that light bulb moment, pating. I believe chat ended up accidentally creating one of the monsters in one of Jake's games. I think like they were talking
It's
about
very possible.
we were talking about something and we're like, and it was one of those things like, haha, what if it was one of these? Nah, what if it was like one of these? But like it did this. And Jake's sitting there like, because of course he is. He's diabolical. He's a mastermind.
Yeah, Jake is a very good dungeon master at engaging with the audience first and foremost, while still also running a tight game. But he is very, very good about taking things and on the fly working it into the mix of kind of what he's got already planned, and has
There it
absolutely no
is.
problem
The
killing his
trash
darlings.
kraken.
The trash kraken. Yeah, I was in that game. I was trying to behave myself during that game, and somehow I still got blamed for the mess that ended up in. No, it was a fantastic game, and I hurt for days afterwards.
Look at it this way, Jeremy. This is how I try to look at it from this perspective. The boneheaded things that my characters do make for good entertainment. It's good content.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. there's people that have said, "Didn't you know that the such and such was trapped?" I'm like, "Of course I did, or I suspected, as a player, but why would I have not walked headlong into the trap? Like my character's got an 8 intelligence, and I want to see what the DM prepared. Like I want to see that trap go off, and if I'm the one who needs to step on it in order to get it to happen, then I'm okay with that." Um, Trash Kraken. Yeah. Okay. So a little bit of an add-on. One of the questions that Caius Wallen asked is very similar to the one that we just answered from Jason, but there was a little bit of an extra part to it that I thought was interesting that I want to also address. The full question is: has an audience ever had an influence, good or bad, on a game that you've been in? Does having an audience change the way you play or the energy that you play with?
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure, because like I said earlier about being in my own head, believe it or not, it I can tell when when I'm having a bad game day. Everybody has bad game days. And if you're just playing privately with a group of friends, have your bad game day, man. Cause like I remember I played a game once with Cole and Chad. I can't remember who else was involved, Karen, I think. And I was so hungover that I ended up, like, just kind of melting sideways, into eventually a full laying position, and that was a bad game day. Another
Was that
time I had a
at
bad
Con?
What's that?
Was that at Con? I think I
Yeah,
feel like that
at
was at Con.
Conline. It was at Conline.
Okay, there you
No,
go.
I actually did, I basically did the same thing at the in-person games at most at cons also.
That's what I'm
This is
remembering.
one of the reasons why I try not to stack up the number of games that I play in at con, because I already
No
know
early
that
morning games.
no early morning games. That's the rule. Um, so yeah, and ooh, that's here we go. We're gonna touch on a touchy subject. An example of when I had a bad game day was I don't remember specifically which episode it was, but we were playing a game of Curse of Strahd, and evidently Miss Thang drank a little too fast. I got pretty drunk and wobbly, and then I got angry. So like this whole range of things you don't want people to see actually happened on stream. And I was so ashamed of myself that I couldn't go back. I never rewatched that episode. I couldn't go back to watch the episode again, to do the notes. So I made Chad do them. I'm like, I can't watch this again, y'all. I'm so sorry. I behaved terribly, and it'll never happen again. And what is it? And what made it worse for me was when somebody who was a regular watcher, like a regular audience member, pointed it out also. Like, oh yeah, you were pretty sloppy drunk and mean. Like, not those exact words, but and nothing feels worse. Nothing feels worse than that. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and not to try to take the conversation back to what we were talking about earlier, but there was an episode pretty early on of Critical Role that I could tell Matt Mercer was having a bad day, and he was kind of taking it out on the players. And it was pretty obvious. Like he would make some calls or address a question, and just a little bit of just a little bit of an edge to it. And it was enough consistent throughout the episode that I sat back and was like, man, there's something going on. Like there's a bad vibe at the table. And yeah, that certainly happens. And I think that being aware of it can be instrumental. It can be very, very helpful to trying to avoid it. But sometimes shit happens. These games are live, and just like with live performance of any kind, sometimes shit happens. So
It's one of those things I mean, nobody's perfect. Everybody's a fuck up in their own way. So it's
well,
like
I mean,
you
not like
you just well, you just have to identify when and you have to identify and own when you screwed something up. Like,
absolutely.
yikes. That was terrible. I am so sorry about that. I was a drunk little piss pants. It won't happen again.
But again, I think that it's important to touch on and illustrate that instead of trying to pretend like it didn't happen or sweep it under the rug or whatever, because that kind of stuff does happen. I can't tell you the amount of home games that I've played in where somebody got a little too drunk, and it changed the course of what was happening for the evening. But showing that it's it's okay that that happens, that it doesn't have to wreck the evening, it doesn't have to wreck the relationship at the table, that you can move past it. I think that's important to show as a part of the hobby, just as much as system mastery or in-depth role playing or any of that kind of stuff. I think again, it's a situation where honesty and transparency can go a long way to understanding that this hobby and this community are vastly more approachable than people might first think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what is it? For me, like that what is it? You want to be transparent, but at the same time, it's so embarrassing when something like that
For
happens
sure.
because we all want to believe that we have a degree of professionalism and we can keep our real life emotions out of things when it's not appropriate. But I'm kind of like a powder keg of a tiny tiny fat woman. So like m- sometimes the powder keg just goes and it happens and it sucks when it happens on stream.
Yeah, and I can understand. I mean, there's definitely been like I stutter and stammer a lot. I trip over my own words. I say things and then I'm like, probably should have joked about that. We kind of touched on that earlier, and I think that ultimately, I mean, like you said before, we're all people, we're all humans. Um, so it's okay. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. If you feel like there's an apology owed, then make the apology and be done with it. No reason to fret about it. Um, so we have a question from Leah Smith. Her question is: when playing in front of an audience and you notice one of your players is having trouble with anxiety, what do you do to help them? Some will avoid their character even though anxiety is out of character.
Okay. So like when you're streaming a game, I'm just going to paraphrase this back to see if I've got it. So when you're streaming a game and one of the people playing has like an anxiety or panic attack, like, what do you do about that? Because the camera's on, you're rolling, everything's happening, and anyone who's ever played on Zoom OBS knows you can't just shut your camera off, because it ruins everything. Okay, so Leah says, yeah, that's basically the question. This has actually come up once before, not with my what is it not with my current gaming group. This actually happened, in one of my Brian games, but somebody, what is it? Somebody, I think it was a Brian game, might be this group. I have no idea. It was a long ass time ago. But somebody had received some bad news. So it wasn't exactly like anxiety, but it was a deer in the headlights. Oh shit, I I'm stuck. I'm stuck here in the game. I can't do anything. I've got to go. Kind of situation. They didn't need to bail. They just needed a moment. So one of the things that I tried to do was take the focus off of that player. So you can actually, what is it? If you're in a situation where you see that somebody that you're playing with is in crisis, you can actually, uh, get in the side chat, be like, "Hey, you look like you're circling the drain. Something's happening. Um, I've got this. Take a moment and just give them the permission that they need to walk away. Put the headset down, walk away, and just take a moment, off stream, because that's totally okay. I live my life like every single day with anxiety. Shit. I'll tell y'all, I don't give a shit. Um the first time I went down to AtCon, I was so nervous about going to this new place to meet all of these new people I didn't know, doing something that's I would never do. I actually got into my car and started to drive to the freeway entrance and threw up on my shirt. So I had a moment, because I'm a puker when I get anxious. So I had a moment where I was sitting there in my car on the side of the road. Well, I should probably just go home. I should probably just go home, pack it in, forget it, don't need to go to this thing. But instead I was like, if I don't do this, I'm always going to wonder what would have happened. So instead, I cleaned myself up the best I could. I did a better job once I got there, trust me. Um, but yeah, I cleaned myself up the best I could. I ended up being late. I ended up being late to AtCon, so it was even worse. I walked through the door, everybody's already seated and being addressed, and everyone like turned to look at me. But I mean, I'm glad that I overcame that and I did it, but I
Me
get
too.
anxiety, y'all. So, yes, if you're on stream and you're having a moment, take your moment. If you have to leave the game, leave the game. Like, you have to support yourself and your own. You have to put your own mask on first before you can put anybody else's masks on, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
hi,
Yeah, I would like to reiterate what I said, and I'm very, very glad that you decided to overcome that and make your way to AtCon.
Oh yeah, and if
Sincerely.
it wasn't implied, if I hadn't gone, none of this would be happening. Like, I
Exactly.
never would have met the people there. I probably wouldn't have gotten as ingrained in the community, probably wouldn't have gone to the second one or the third, you know? So, yeah, it's me choosing to go with a barf shirt, basically tipped over that first domino. And, glad that it
Wow.
happened.
I'm wondering if I hugged Tamiko the first AtCon.
You did
Okay.
not. I didn't hug anybody the first AtCon,
That's fair.
and nobody could tell. I even I asked Chris Johnson later, and she's like, "Nope, couldn't tell." Like, excellent.
I had no clue.
Yeah.
But I was dealing with my own, oh my God, new place, all these new people. Um, but yeah, I don't struggle with that level of anxiety. Thank goodness. I internalize stress. So thank God my wife is a fantastic masseuse, because I beg her all the time to work out all of the knots that build up in my shoulders and my neck and my back. Because I internalize most of my stress. And I talked about the anxiety that I do deal with on the episode of Help Action that I did with Kenya, I think it was 2 episodes ago, about imposter syndrome. And the anxiety that I deal with is mostly before a game. Whether I'm running the game or playing in the game, or even for these help actions, I start to get that butterflies in my stomach, waiting in the wings kind of anxiety and anticipation and excitement kind of all rolled into one. Um, I don't, I can't recall any time in a game that I've been running where I've noticed someone having that extreme of an anxiety attack or reaction. But I think, like what you said, I think that's the perfect advice. Just saying, hey, if you need a moment, it's okay. Like I have a little flap that covers my camera, but before I had this camera, it's actually a thing from AtCon. It's one of the little paper stands that they had that
Oh,
says reserved for AtCon.
buddy,
I
here.
would just drop it right on.
This right here. That's what you do.
Yep, exactly.
Like Kleenex.
Boom, done. Don't have to turn the camera off. No
Yep.
problem. Um, but I did have a moment in a game that I was playing, and it was just myself and Baron Cantrell. We were playing in a game, and when I went on break for the game, went to the bathroom, and my wife told me that one of my uncles had passed away. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's all." It was very sudden, very out of the blue, and I came back from break, and I told Baron what had happened, and we went back into the game, but I couldn't focus on it. Like my attention and my immersion and my enjoyment was completely sapped, and I ended up just calling the game early. I just made apologies to the people who were watching, and I still haven't made good on the promise of making it up to Baron for a rescheduled version of that game. But someday we'll get
We need to get Baron in on the Golden Girls game.
there. Absolutely, 100%. So yeah, I think it's uh, the same kind of rule that we use in our home group, and that I tend to try to use as a mantra, even for playing online, or sometimes especially for playing online, is that real life has to come first. Ultimately, this is a game. This is a hobby. This is what we do when we have the time to be able to do it, and the mental fortitude. Um, and sometimes I've had those days where you just can't play. Your heart and your mind is not going to be in it, and that's okay. Like it's all right to do that. Obviously, you want to strive so that that's not the norm. You want to be as dependable as you can, but sometimes shit just happens and real life gets in the way. Real life is fucking messy. and it doesn't play by your rules or your expectations or your schedule. And sometimes it demands your attention, and that's okay. That's what
Ain't
being
that
an
the
adult
truth?
is about, unfortunately. But I mean, that's, you just do what you have to do. And hopefully, the next session you can come back. No big deal.
Ooh, speaking of, we were talking about mini terrain domain earlier. A wild Jake has appeared.
Yes, hello, Jacob. Yes, we are talking about a Golden Girls Honey Heist game. Maybe you should run that because Tamiko and I both want to play.
Maybe.
Plant that little seed.
Give Jake a little plug. Oh.
Splorch. Okay, so moving right along. So now I've never played in a game that is in front of an in-person audience, such as like what Acquisitions Inc. does at PAX and things like that. But I imagine that there are probably some pretty major differences between that kind of an experience and what it's like playing in front of a virtual audience. Can you think of any possible examples of what these differences could be?
I imagine there's two different kinds of games. Like if you were doing a tabletop game in front of like a live studio like or theater audience, I imagine there's two different kinds of games. One of which is kind of like when they do Critical Role or Acquisitions Inc., where there's moderate participation in that, they shout things out or sing or do whatever, but they're not doing anything that directly influences the game. That's against the rules. Like you can't shout rules advice or anything like that at those games. They'll kick your ass out. I know. I have a friend who got their ass kicked out of one of the shows. Um, but I feel like there is a second type of game there that could be wild, right? Like, what is it? Like, live action theater improv kind of situation where you're sitting there, you're playing the game, but people in the audience are throwing out scenarios or different situations or different uh what's the word for obstacle? Monkey wrench? Obstacles. We'll go
Obstacle,
with
encounter,
obstacles. If you all come,
hurdle,
chat, if you come up
challenge.
with a better word than obstacles, please. No, but seriously, like, I mean, how wild would that game be, right? Like,
I pity the DM.
you just have to
That's all
keep
I'll
up.
say. Yeah, you'd have
But
to be
no,
on your shit.
I have the closest I have ever come to playing in a live audience game was probably at first at con when I was playing the game that Jake was running with another DM, and that Minotaur moment happened. and, and everybody who was there knows the Minotaur moment because for that whole section of game, all the other tables just stopped and they were just looking like, what is happening at that table? That's the closest I've ever come to audience gaming. Like, for real.
Oh yeah, I definitely remember that moment. Fondly might not be the right word, but there's a part of it that is certainly fondly. um, okay, so the rare exception to a lot, I think, of what we've been talking about tonight would be charity streams. Um, Usually for these kinds of events, the audience is much larger, and there's a lot of new faces in many of these games. But the focus of these games also tends to kind of shift a bit, because the goal of these streams is ultimately to draw attention to and raise money for the selected charity. So almost by necessity, the GMs need to engage with the audience more so than they might normally, and to incentivize the people who are watching to donate and spread the word. But I think you excel at this particular thing, these charity streams, more than most other people that I know, most of the people that I've had the chance to interact with, at the very least. And the time and effort that you personally put into doing so, it's nothing short of incredible, honestly. But what is it about live play RPG streams that seems to be so perfectly well suited for charity events?
Well, I mean, this is more recent charity games, but yes, the ability, speaking as both an audience member and somebody who tries to actively to hype up the rest of the audience, I think that one of the best tools for charity streaming is the ability to sow chaos into the actual game that's being played. So, what is it? The last couple of charity streams that I have helped with, by helping, I mean being actually in the audience, and what is it? In the audience, and just bantering about with everybody else in there, getting everybody else in the chat involved with what's going on. But yeah, the ability to make a donation, and have that donation make the people playing the actual game do something, or in some cases stop doing something, is pivotal. There was the one stream where people were literally throwing money at the donation box, to try to get somebody to stop speaking in an Australian accent. And to be fair, I mean, to be fair, like it was a lot of fun. It was such a fun game. Like just uh I think that there were other, what is it? There were different tiers of rewards also. So like, a different tiered amount would get somebody to sing, et cetera, et cetera. I don't remember all of the particulars. Oh yeah, that would have been one. Please stop talking like Jar Jar Binks, please. Please take all the money. Like, for sure. But yeah, like, I mean, um I've never actually played. I don't have the perspective of being a player in a charity game. So I can't speak to that. I don't know how that went with like splitting the attention between the two things. But as a audience member slash moderator, moderator, there wasn't a lot of moderation to be done back then. Like, it was pretty tame, most of the time. But yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Like, if somebody says something in chat, you glomp onto it. You engage with the people who aren't engaging that much. It's a delicate road to tread, though, because you also don't want to call out people who actively aren't engaging and aren't speaking, because it's okay to lurk. I'm gonna throw that out there. It's okay to lurk. You don't have to banter or talk or say anything if you're in a chat. I mean, nowadays, it's probably a good idea to maybe just be like, "Hi, I'm here, but I'm lurking. Leave me alone." Because of all of the nonsense that's happening with Twitch and the bots and everything like that. But yeah, I'm tangenting. I'm tangenting. Stop me.
I'm perfectly fine with it.
We're spinning.
Um, yeah, no, no, I would agree. I think there's a lot more there's a lot more exchange between what's happening on camera and what's happening in the chat during charity events. At least my point of view. that's the way it seems to be. And I think charity streaming games, they're kind of a different creature than a normal game, and that's one of the main reasons why. And I think having it so that the audience gets, it sounds horrible to put it this way, because obviously you're getting something by donating your money to a charity. You're giving it to a very good cause, and that in and of itself is the reward. But there is a nice feeling whenever what you give as a part of this donation has a little bit of a kickback, has a little bit of a reward from the game that you're engaging in. And I think that it's a good idea to play into that as a person who's running a game or playing in a charity stream game, because that encourages donations, and that's what you're there for. That's the whole purpose. So playing into that, I think, is good, not only for the event itself, but also sometimes it's fun just to cut loose and let that kind of craziness, fly. I think that it crosses a line at a certain point and can be highly detrimental. There were a couple of games that I have seen that were popular enough that the charities were donating fast enough that the interjections were so frequent that it ended up just becoming a hot mess. And there wasn't really much of a game at that point. It was really just people reacting
Are
and
we
responding
circling
to
back to
donations.
Critical Role again? Because
No,
that's the first thing that came to my mind was the handful of times when Critical Role tried to do charity streams, but donations, and they set a pretty high price point too. Donations of like 200 or more, or something like that, directly influence the game. It devolved into madness so fast. But
yeah,
that's the other thing too, is I don't have any experience with that. Like we do small grassroots uh charity charity like driven things, so we typically don't have big number audiences, so it's usually not something that needs to be worried about. A lot of times we do have to put in some effort to kick up the hype and everything that's going on in the chat, and the best way to do that is just to have fun. Like, just chat it up and have fun with the other people, like your friends in the chat, the other moderators. Shit, that's how me and Dwight became besties. Was was we were working one of Jake's streams, not this year, but I think it was last year in 2020. Um, and we just kept going back and forth about the dungeon gate being unlocked, and what is it, and the mimics getting out, and all of this stuff. So it was a fun time. And then of course everyone knows my MO for sowing chaos is the odd dollar odd cent donation, but I stand by that. It works.
I have witnessed that on more than one occasion, for certain. There are people out there that don't like a non-even number, and they'll do what they can to try to bring balance to the force. um, there was something else that I was going to add, but who knows? It was probably just some smart-ass comment.
When you remember, write it down.
Good advice. If only somebody had said that. No. Okay. I have one less talking point that I want to bring up, and that is that you are remarkably prolific and present within the community at large, but most especially during live stream games. You were one of the very, very first people that I can recall showing up consistently in the live chats of my games. And I cannot tell you how meaningful it is as a creator to have people in the audience, engaging with me, and making it known that what I am doing is enjoyable and is worthwhile. So I would be sorely remiss if I failed to say thank you. So, on behalf of myself and many others, thank you for always being such a supportive and genuinely caring cheerleader, Tamiko.
Aw, thanks, Boo. I love you too.
Mwah. Um, cool. That's everything that I have. So, unless there's anything else from the audience, I think we're good for this evening. So, is there anything that you want to say in parting before we call it a night?
Nope. I think I'm good. But cough, cough, Jake, cough, cough. Run a game. Run the Golden Girls freaking bear game for us.
Yes, do it. Do it now.
But I'm just kidding. I don't want to put him on the spot. But
No,
yeah.
he needs to be put on the spot. Jake loves it. Well, thank you so much, Tamiko, sincerely, for agreeing to come on to the show and talk about this topic tonight with me. It's been awesome. You and I have run the same circles for a long time, and it's always been a joy to be able to sit down with you. You know, whenever we do the little side chats or hang out and play, whatever, Jackbox, or hang out at AtCon or any other chance that we get. So, yeah, it was an absolute pleasure to be able to sit down and talk to you tonight. So thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. News. I will not have a help action episode next month because the next episode will be episode 40. And I am going to save that for November because I managed to twist my wife's arm into being my guest because November is our anniversary month. So we are going to be doing a help action where I'm going to bring my wife on and poke her with questions. And yeah, it just should be fun. So that'll be episode 40 in November at some point. I don't know if I'm going to be able to manage to convince her to do it on our anniversary night. I'm probably not even going to try that. We'll see. But what else? Oh, tomorrow, finally, Evermore La Masquerade will be a brand new campaign that starts here on the channel. I've wanted to run this game for years and years now, and I'm finally pulling the trigger on it, and I have a fantastic group of players. I'm so excited and anxious for it, but I know it's going to be a blast, so I'm very excited. That starts tomorrow night, 7:30 Central, so be there, be square. All right. I don't think I can think of anything else, so thank you very much again, Tamiko. Love you. I love all of you out there who may be tuning in, whether you watched live with us tonight or whether you are tuning in at some point in the future. Until next time, may your guys stay high.
Clutch your pearls while we go. Clutch them. Clutch.
Let's always be with it.
Clutch. Oh my God. You're me. Oh.